contenido o lo expresado en el mismo.
Welcome to Vanguardia America. I'm your host, James Garcia. Thank you for joining us. It is Saturday, August the 3rd on Vanguardia America. We come to you every Saturday morning at 8 a.m., and it's broadcast right here out of the studios on the 1190 a.m., which is headquartered in North Central Phoenix. If you ever miss our show, just go to vanguardiaamerica.com to find podcasts of all of our past episodes. In just a few moments, we'll go to our weekly news roundup featuring stories from around the state and across the nation about the Latino community. After that, my guest today will be Professor Saul Sandoval Perea, a professor in the Department of Business and Management at the CETYS University in Tijuana, Mexico. He's an expert on the intersection of politics, economics, and business with a focus on Mexico and Latin America. And he's here to catch us up on the chaos that has ensued in Venezuela after last Sunday's election. The professor and I will also be talking today about the incoming administration of Mexico's president-elect, Claudia Sheinbaum, who assumes office on October the 1st. But first, and then if we have an opportunity, we might also hear from a second guest a little bit later today. We're just waiting for a confirmation on that. Now, in our final segment of the show, my guest will be Ramon Reyes and Gil Bevins of Latino USA TV and Arizona Barrio Stories, and Johnny Murillo of Chicano Hollywood. Murillo is in town for an event tonight at the Arizona Latino Arts and Cultural Center, where, full disclosure, I do some volunteer work. I help them with their website a little bit. And we'll hear from the trio about these fascinating and fast-growing media ventures and how they're tapping into the burgeoning Latino audience in the United States for entertainment and news. So that's what's in store for our interviews. Please stand by for that. But now, let's go to our weekly news roundup. We start with this story from NBC Latino's correspondent Suzanne Gamboa. In the 5 years since 23 people were massacred in a racially motivated shooting in El Paso, Texas, in a Walmart there, since then, the incendiary rhetoric that motivated their murderer has worsened and become normalized, say leaders of anti-hate, immigration, and anti-Semitic groups. Families of those killed and 22 more were wounded will mark the grim anniversary today. That was the day that a gunman drove 700 miles to target Mexicans, and as he told police after the shooting, because of their invasion of the United States. The incident ended the lives of their spouses, children, family members, and friends. Before the shooting, the gunman posted an angry manifesto online saying that it was his response to the Hispanic invasion of Texas and the purported replacement of white people by immigrants, echoing the Great Replacement conspiracy theory that is promoted by white supremacists. Paul Jamarowski, father of Jordan Anchonda, who, along with her husband, Andre Achonda, lost her life shielding her 2-month-old son, he said he will spend the day reminiscing, remembering them, and the people that they were. The shooter involved in the massacre was sentenced last year to 90 consecutive life terms after pleading guilty to federal charges that included hate crimes. He still faces state prosecution. The city's wounds fester as the language used before the massacre by then-President Donald Trump, describing the border as being under an invasion and the nation being attacked, has spread and now amplified, according to the leaders of several organizations, including Human Rights First, the Border Network for Human Rights, the Jewish Council for Public Affairs, and America's Voice, all of whom held a press conference by telephone with reporters earlier this week. Even as the anniversary date of the massacre approached, delegates at the Republican National Convention last month cheered and waved banners reading "Mass Deportation Now." Trump, meanwhile, continues to decry the border invasion, as he calls it, and he's repeatedly used a phrase similar to one that was used by Adolf Hitler, declaring that immigrants are, quote, in Trump's words, poisoning the blood of our country, unquote. Since the racist El Paso massacre, Trump has been joined by a chorus of others, largely Republicans, using the same language, according to Thomas Saenz, President and General Counsel of the Mexican American Legal Defense and Educational Fund, a civil rights group that focuses on the Latino community. On Wednesday, Trump told an audience at the National Association of Black Journalists that people crossing the U.S.-Mexico border are taking Black jobs. Quote, they're taking the employment away from Black people. They're coming in, and they're coming in, and they're invading, he said. America's Voice, an immigrant advocacy group, has been tracking what it calls the normalization of the invasion and the great replacement rhetoric that's being used by members of Congress. In 5 years since the mass shooting in El Paso, 165 members of the current Congress have amplified the replacement theory and invasion rhetoric, according to Zachary Mueller, America's Voice Senior Research Director. Also, in this year's first 7 months, congressional members have pushed the invasion and great replacement theory more than 650 times in social media accounts and filed 11 pieces of legislation that used the invasion rhetoric. They have employed the rhetoric in 302 ads, spending $30 million the first 6 months of the year, as compared to 61 ads in all of 2022, with a total of $5.5 million, according to Mueller. Mueller said, quote, 5 years later, the bigoted conspiracy theory that motivated the deadly hate crime that threatens our public safety and American democracy must be urgently condemned. In our next story, NBC Latino's Suzanne Gamboa and Nicole Acevedo report on efforts by Vice President Kamala Harris to make up some of the ground lost with Latino voters by President Biden since the 2020 election. The dateline is San Antonio. Rebecca Contreras was planning to vote again for President Joe Biden, but the 30-year-old Texan was uncertain that he could win. Now, with Vice President Kamala Harris as the de facto nominee, she told NBC Latino that her confidence has begun to come back. Maybe there's some hope again, she said. Long seen as a reliable pack or group of Democratic voters, the support of younger Latinos like Contreras was less of a sure bet for Democrats this year than in previous election cycles. Democrats saw then President Donald Trump and the Republican Party carve out a larger share of Hispanic votes in 2020. This year, polls showed a continuing decline for Biden, with the two presidential candidates essentially tied among Latino voters. The party has also feared losing more Latino supporters to third-party candidates and worried that Latino voters might simply skip the election and stay home altogether. Hundreds of thousands of Latino citizens turn 18 and are eligible to vote each year. An estimated 32 to 34 million Latino voters are eligible this year to cast a ballot. Based on a recent survey of over 2,000 voters who are under 40, Latinos said 32% of the time that they would support Trump. 28% chose Biden, and another 28% said that they would support someone else, according to the University of Chicago Gen Ford survey. At the same time, young Latino college students in Arizona, Georgia, and Pennsylvania told NBC News in April that while most supported progressive policies that align with the Democratic agenda, few expressed support for Biden or Trump. 1 of every 5 Hispanics will be voting in their first presidential election year, according to Unidos US, a national Latino civil rights organization. Denison Pinto, 19, of Allentown, Pennsylvania, had been exploring voting for a third-party candidate. On Monday, Pinto said he prefers a Democratic president, but he's not yet sold on Harris. Fellow Allentown, Pennsylvania resident Jeremy Bautista, 20, cast his first vote in a local Pennsylvania election last year. He's still mulling whether to vote this year. While Bautista said Harris is looking like one of the better options, he's unsure whether she lines up with his views on economic policy and the Israeli-Hamas conflict. Carlos Odio, a co-founder of Equus Research, a Democratic firm that polls Latinos, said in a post on X recently that an early read of the data from the July 11th and July 11th through 15th poll of Nevada Latinos shows Harris winning back some Latinos who have slipped away from Biden. In-house Biden campaign polling conducted by Democratic pollster Matt Barreto shows that Harris is more popular than Biden among Latino voters. Maca Casado, Harris's campaign media director, said in a statement that Harris has worked to earn Latino support throughout her career and focused on issues of healthcare, childcare, and fighting gun violence. The abortion debate, meanwhile, is also expected to play a major role in the Latino vote. More Latinas live in states with abortion bans and restrictions than did last year. Florida recently enacted a 6-week abortion ban. In Texas, where there is a near total abortion ban, the teen birth rate rose for the first time in 15 years, and the average fertility rate rose 5% among Latinas. Harris has been outspoken on abortion rights, and that could help efforts in Arizona and Nevada to get abortion rights measures on the November ballot. And finally, we'll close with this. Venezuela's opposition candidate, Edmundo González Urrutia, thanked the U.S. on Friday for recognizing him as the official winner of Sunday's controversial presidential election, which both González Urrutia and President Nicolás Maduro claimed victory in. This is a story from the Associated Press and Nicolás Acevedo with NBC Latino. The United States recognized González Urrutia as Venezuela's president-elect based on evidence that the opposition released this week, according to U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken. The opposition published more than 80% of the actual electoral tally sheets that they received directly from polling stations across Venezuela on Election Day. These tally sheets show that González Urrutia obtained 66% of the votes, while Maduro received 31%, according to a site that NBC News reviewed on Wednesday. Blinken said in a statement Thursday, given the overwhelming evidence, it is clear to the United States and most importantly to the Venezuelan people that Edmundo González Urrutia won. Meanwhile, the administration of Nicolás Maduro has refused to admit that he lost the election. That's our news roundup for the day. We'll be coming back in just a few minutes with our first interview with Saúl Sandoval Perea from Tijuana to talk about the election results in Venezuela. I'm your host, James Garcia. Thank you for joining us on Vanguardia America.
Pendiente, mi gente. Cada lunes te presentamos una vitrina latina en el Valle del Sol. Aprendemos sobre las problemáticas y realidades de nuestros países en las Américas, su acontecer, expresiones artísticas y los recursos que están a la disposición de nuestra comunidad. Pendiente, mi gente. Lunes a las 9 de la mañana por la onda 1190.
¿Has intentado alcanzar el bienestar financiero, mental o físico y no lo has logrado? Soy Susana Díaz y te invito cada lunes a las 3 de la tarde a escuchar En Balance con Susana por la onda 1190M y junto a expertos encontremos las herramientas, técnicas y métodos que nos lleven a vivir mejor. Recuerda, cada lunes a las 3 de la tarde tenemos una cita en la estación más informativa de Arizona, la 1190 AM.
¿Tiene su dinero en orden? No, pues es hora. Yo soy Tomás Rivas de Marisol Federal Credit Union. Te invitamos los jueves de 3 a 4 de la tarde a tu hora de finanzas, donde vamos a hablar más de ahorros, los préstamos personales, casas, negocios y más. Te invito a que tengas una relación con tu banco. Los jueves de 3 a 4 por la onda 1190.
Welcome back. I'm your host, James Garcia. Thank you for listening to Vanguardia America. We're going to go now to my first guest for the day, Professor Saul Sandoval Perea, a professor in the Department of Business and Management at CETYS University in Tijuana, Mexico. He's an expert on politics, economics, and business, and he focuses on Mexico and Latin America, and he's here to catch us up on really what is the chaos that's ensued in Venezuela after Sunday's election. If you heard my report just now, the sitting president, Nicolas Maduro, has refused to acknowledge that he's lost the election, despite the fact that the opposition party has released data, some 80% of all of the vote tallies, that shows, in fact, that they gained something in the range of about 2/3 of all the vote versus about 1/3 for Maduro. The United States government, meanwhile, has called on Nicolas Maduro to release the results of the election and has frankly declared and identified the opposition party leader as the winner of the race. So thank you for joining us, Professor Sandoval.
Thank you for having me again, James.
So let's just go right into, your assessment of where things stand right now in Venezuela, and we should let the audience know, just by way of background, a little bit of background in that Venezuela was once, not too long ago, a very successful country, if you will, with regards to its economy. It had a strong economy. It's a leading source of oil in the region. And it's seen a massive decline in its economic health in recent years. And with that, I think the last estimates are something like 7 million Venezuelans have left the country. Correct me if I have that number wrong, but several million Venezuelans have left the country because of the crash in the economy. And President Nicolas Maduro is basically now saying, as a result of Sunday's election, that he won and that he doesn't intend to leave office. Talk about your assessment of where things stand right now.
Yes, I think you mentioned a key word here, which is chaos. Right now, the situation in Venezuela is chaotic. I guess we could anticipate this. It was in the making, this political turmoil that we're living now. Yes, Venezuela, as you rightly pointed out, was a country that was doing economically much better than now.
Mm-hmm.
Before, we need to go back to early 2000, when President Chavez was still in power.
Mm-hmm. President Hugo Chavez, yeah.
Exactly, Hugo Chavez, since around 1999. And during his tenure, the situation at some point was getting better, mainly because oil prices were high. However, by 2010, oil prices began to decrease, and then that fact made clear that the political and economic structure constructed by the Chavez administration were not that strong. Then Chavez passed away in 2013, and his right hand, Nicolas Maduro, reached power. Mm-hmm. Since then, the situation has been worse. Oil prices plummeted, and he showed right away his autocratic style in terms of government. In Venezuela, you are elected for president for 6 years. He was elected in 2012 and then moving to 2018. In 2018, he was reelected with serious doubts about the electoral process. And now in 2024, he was reelected again. And this all happened this week. The opposition claims that they won and that the current government doesn't want to show the electoral data.
May I ask?
Yes.
When he was elected the first time, was he popular? Did people support his election in significant numbers? And then second question would be, what has driven so many Venezuelans to leave the country? And many of them, of course, have ended up here in the United States.
Exactly. Around 800,000 now in the U.S. Yes, he was popular mainly because of the image of Hugo Chavez, right? He was his right hand, and the people still believed in the Chavez regime even after he passed away. But his style, he's not Chavez. He doesn't have the same charisma, and his style is totally different from Chavez. And his governance skills are not the best, right?
Hmm.
This is a struggle between ideologies, economic ideologies, and he showed that the struggle between a socialist or a planned economy versus a capitalist system. Venezuela has a mixed economy, although tilted towards a more socialist economy. And we've seen that those models don't work, right? But he was stubborn in trying to make Venezuela a more socialist style country and economy with the consequences that we've seen. So people are leaving Venezuela because they don't find enough job opportunities. The economic scenario is really
It's really bread and butter issue. I
hard.
mean, it's bread and butter. I mean, inflation.
Exactly.
It's the
Inflation
prices are
has
too high.
skyrocketed.
Yeah, shortage of
Political-
supplies, shortage of goods that people need, to purchase. Right? It's sort of kind of the bread and butter stuff that people depend on. But tell me this also: has there been substantial repression, political repression over the years, and has that grown?
Exactly. Yes, there have been a lot of political repression, political violence. So this is pretty much an authoritarian regime, and we saw this the dark face of the regime this week when they didn't want to recognize the results, and they are doing what they can to remain in power.
An interesting twist now is that the candidate who for the opposition who won, or I'm sorry, I should say, is officially has lost, but has, based on the vote tallies, apparently actually won the election. Edmundo González Urrutia. He was, I guess, he wasn't expected to be the candidate until Maria Corina Machado was essentially banned from running for president, although she has been obviously part of the campaign. But speaking of repression, I understand that she is now in hiding, afraid that she will be jailed by the Maduro government. So, when we talked earlier about chaos, I mean, it really is a chaotic situation, isn't it?
It is. So Maduro has different options to try to continue with his plan. One of these options is just to exert even more pressure on the opposition by arresting political opponents so that the situation can be under control under his terms. And actually, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to arrest Maria Corina Machado and even Edmundo González Urrutia, so that they can get back political control in the country. But
to shut them up. I mean, to shut them up. That's their goal right now.
That's one political alternative that they have. We can see different scenarios, James, what is going to happen, and also the influence of international actors, international countries.
Well, I was going to ask that. I mean, is there, my understanding is that about 16 countries have basically said, Mr. Maduro, you need to provide the election results, the official election results, and they essentially are signaling that he should withdraw, right, his opposition to to this. But how much influence does the United States and other countries like Mexico, for instance, truly have on Maduro? Is he likely to listen?
Yeah, you also mentioned the right word, the true influence that these countries can have. Well, we've seen that they haven't had a lot of influence, because even though the U.S. has imposed some sanctions on Venezuela through not allowing them to sell oil to the States, the Venezuela government has been able to divert those sanctions by selling oil to other countries and then resell it, right? So right now, the U.S. is sort of like a tide because of the international situation. We have conflicts in the Middle East. We have conflicts in Europe, Eastern Europe, with Ukraine and Russia, and also we have the political campaign in the U.S. Full throttle.
Oh my God.
So it is unlikely that the U.S. will do more than economic sanctions for the short term.
Our attention obviously is focused in many ways on so many other issues, as you mentioned, the Ukrainian war and Middle East and etc. But should the U.S. government, though, I'm not sure if this is quite the right phrasing, take some of the responsibility for having allowed things to get as far as they have gotten in Venezuela, because its attention tends to be more focused overseas across the Atlantic, or even on what's going on in Taiwan, and not necessarily paying that much attention to what's going on in Latin America. And this has been a brewing problem for a long time.
Exactly. It's a problem in the making. Well, the U.S. has had an important policy towards Latin America. But yeah, it is true that other international commitments have taken more attention for the U.S. now. Yeah, we saw the rise of Chavez, all the rhetoric against the U.S. since 2000. Even President Trump threatened to send military troops to Venezuela during his term.
Oh, I'd forgotten about that. Yes.
Yes, but he just threatened to do that, right? But I guess it's not a priority in terms of U.S. foreign policy.
Well, we've got about a minute in this segment, but let me close the segment by asking you if you could briefly predict, if you can, or try to predict what's going to happen. Is Maduro just going to stick it out and scoff at all the naysayers, or is there likely to be a shift and a change in government there?
I think in the short term he will remain there, and the international community will increase sanctions towards Venezuela, and who's going to suffer? Venezuelan people. According to some polls, some Venezuelans have stated that if Maduro wins again, they will flee the country. Around 30% of those interviewed are doing that. So we expect to see more people leaving the country for the short term.
Yeah. So when we come back, we're going to close out this segment, and when we come back, we're going to be speaking to Professor Sandoval about Mexico and kind of where things stand right now as the new president-elect, Claudia Sheinbaum, prepares to take office in October. And I'd also love to hear from you, Professor Sandoval, your thoughts on how the U.S. election is tying in, especially now with Vice President Kamala Harris on the ticket. So we'll be right back. Thank you for joining us on Vanguardia America. I'm your host, James Garcia.
Nos salimos de WhatsApp y llegamos a la radio. Todos los miércoles a las 9 de la mañana te invitamos un cafecito con noticias, recursos, entrevistas, arte, negocios, espectáculos y un piquete de buen humor. Porque el periodismo es más que información, es diálogo y complicidad. Únete a nosotros para una dosis semanal de café y charlemos, porque en Conecta Arizona tú eres nuestra inspiración. Escucha la hora del cafecito de Conecta Arizona todos los miércoles a las 9 de la mañana en la onda 1190.
¿Qué tal, amigos? Les saluda su amigo Ulises Cortés para que se conecten con su programa ¿Qué onda, Arizona? De lunes a viernes de 4 a 6 de la tarde, donde tendremos noticias, deportes, entretenimiento y sobre todo mucha música. Tus tardes serán únicas en ¿Qué onda, Arizona? De 4 a 6 de la tarde. Conéctate con nosotros y sé parte de la historia aquí en tu casa a 1190. Hola, ¿qué tal, amigos? ¿Cómo están? Los quiero invitar todos los sábados a las 11 de la mañana a que me acompañen en la hora más feliz de su radio, La Hora Feliz. Música retro, música de los 80, música que marcó tu juventud. Sé parte de la historia de nuestra música. 11 de la mañana, todos los sábados, en la hora más feliz de su radio. Y recuerda, la música se lleva en el corazón. La Hora Feliz de la 1190.
Porque la información
Pasa fronteras. Somos Yasmín Islas
y Enrique Delgadillo.
y te invitamos de lunes a viernes de 2 a 3 de la tarde
A sintonizar
Noticias sobre la Mesa.
Noticias sobre la Mesa.
Tu radio sin
fronteras.
En esa hora donde Arizona y Sonora nos hermanamos
Para resaltar nuestras raíces.
Y nuestras costumbres, porque llevamos a México en la sangre.
De 2 a 3 de la tarde te esperamos.
Por La Onda 1190 AM.
Welcome back. I'm your host, James Garcia. Thank you for joining us. We're going to return to my interview with Professor Sandoval, but we're going to switch gears now from Venezuela to Mexico and talk about Claudia Sheinbaum, who is the first female president elect and president to be in Mexico. And we're also going to be talking about Kamala Harris a bit and kind of the influence that the U.S. may have on Mexico in the coming years and vice versa. Thank you, Professor Sandoval, for joining us.
Sure. Thank you.
So to the question, first of all, what's the latest with Claudia Sheinbaum? Is she essentially adjusting to her new role as president-elect, and is there great anticipation of that in Mexico?
Yes, well, she's in the transition period. It's going to be a very smooth transition period because the incumbent president comes from the same political party, and they are very close. What she's been doing is trying to form her cabinet for the presidency that will go from 2024 to 2030. She's been given some speeches outlining how she sees or expects her government to be, right?
Is she already building relations with U.S. officials? Has she been meeting with U.S. government officials as she prepares for the transition?
She hasn't done that, but she spoke with Vice President Kamala Harris after she won the election. I think it was after the election was on June the 2nd. I think she spoke with Vice President Harris around the 3rd or 4th of June. And they just share experiences and talk about the future in terms of the U.S.-Mexico relations.
Should we expect sort of a consistency in terms of the relationship between the two countries in the coming years, and particularly on immigration? Obviously, that's always a hot topic. Between the two countries, and Mexico has played a role in, for instance, the Remain in Mexico policy and other policies that are connected to U.S. immigration policy. Do we expect that to continue, or do you think that there might be a shift if Sheinbaum comes in? Well, she will come in, and of course, if Kamala Harris actually gets elected. Is there anything that's likely to change?
I think we expect to see more changes, more dramatic changes if candidate or former President Trump wins.
Yes.
Because he is coming back. He has promised to be even more aggressive on immigration this time, and also on drug trafficking and on the economy as well in terms of U.S.-Mexico relations. With Kamala Harris, we should expect to see more continuity in terms of President Biden's border policies. Although Vice President Harris, she was one of the senators that actually opposed the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement on the grounds of environmental concerns.
The revision of it, the revision of NAFTA, which has now been
exactly the revision of NAFTA in 2020. And now we're going to start next year another review process of the agreement, and President Trump will also press hard on some areas of the agreement, but also President Harris, if she wins, right? She's going to be very, she's going to pay a lot of attention to environmental standards in both in Mexico and in the U.S., and also she will listen to the claims and complaints about American unions in terms of the benefits that the agreement offers Mexican workers and to Mexican companies in general.
Yeah, she has come out very strongly as essentially suggesting that she's going to pick up right where President Biden left off in terms of her support of the unions. And that, as you just noted, will play into our relationship with them. But on the other side, if Mr. Trump somehow gets back into office, he's talking about the mass deportation of millions of people. And I assume that if he's talking about dumping them somewhere, Mexico is going to be a likely destination for that. I mean, what kind of chaos would that create? And we have about 2 minutes before we end this segment, but what kind of chaos could that possibly create if millions of people are simply dumped across the border?
Exactly. Again, so Mexico is going to bear the consequences, and can elect the elected the president, Sheinbaum. Also, I've seen a trait of her that doesn't help. She, in line with President López Obrador, she has expressed that Mexico now should be viewed as an equal partner in the U.S., that not adopting a submissive attitude towards the U.S. So it's sort of like a signaling a more assertive position for Mexico, even to some extent a little bit aggressive. And if you combine President Trump attitudes with Sheinbaum's attitudes, then we see a lot of chaos and a lot of political tension and economic tension between the U.S. and Mexico. I think it will be smoother if Kamala Harris wins, because she sees more border issue in a more comprehensive way. So I think we'll see greater cooperation with Harris and more difficult cooperation with Trump in terms of Mexico.
Professor Sandoval is based in Tijuana, Mexico. He's an expert on politics, economics, and business. I want to thank you, Professor Sandoval Perea, for joining us again, being on the show, and we'd love to have you back as things get a little closer to the November election to make an assessment on what's been happening between our two countries again. So thank you so much for joining us. Have a great day.
Thank you to Vanguardia America and to you, James. Have a good one.
Thank you. And we're going to switch gears now and lighten the mood a little bit on some level. Instead of talking heavy international politics, we're going to go to our guest in-house who we have with us. We have three individuals who are doing some really exciting things in terms of Latino entertainment and broadcast, live stream, media, the whole range of things that they're looking at now. I want to introduce our guest. If you're watching us on Facebook, to my right, Gil Bivens, who is one of the founders of Latino USA TV and Arizona Radio Stories. To his right, Roman Reyes, who is also part of that whole team, Latino USA TV. And then in addition to that, we have a special guest here in the studio who's visiting with us, Johnny Murillo, who is in charge of Chicano Hollywood, which is just a really fascinating and fast-growing venture. And so I want to thank all three of you gentlemen for being with us today. And because we have you guys sharing a mic, if you could make sure to do that thing that you know how to do so well, Gil. Yeah. So first of all, let me start with Johnny. You're in town for an event tonight. Yes. That's going to be held at the Arizona Latino Arts and Cultural Center, and talk to us about the goal of that event and how that ties into with your passion, your work, Chicano Hollywood.
Oh, awesome! Thank you. First, thanks for having us. When we got the email for this, we were pretty excited about it. So what we're doing tonight is, we've been going to different cities this summer. I'm sorry, we've been going to different cities this summer, and we've been having basically networking, informational meetings. We're going and we're just showing our vision, our passion. Every city that we've gone to, there's been somebody there. So we've been to that's already connected to us. It's already been coming to our events, already part of us.
Some sort of a media outlet, you mean?
Well, no, these are individuals.
Okay.
These are filmmakers.
Okay.
These are content creators. So they've been coming to our events. They've been part of us. So we've been to Chicago, been to San Diego, to Las Vegas, and we're meeting with city council, with aldermen, with congressional offices, and we're basically establishing a presence because our mission is to build up and train, empower Chicano / Latino filmmakers. So they're for everybody.
So backing up one step,
Mhm.
Chicano Hollywood, define that and how that's fitting into your tour. But define Chicano
So
Hollywood.
Chicano Hollywood, that's our brand and that's our movement. This is a movement that kind of came on us. It's kind of a fun story, but I'm a producer. I've been in Hollywood for like 16 years now. So it came on the set of a movie that I wrote. It's called Horchata with Oat Milk. Should be out this fall.
Okay.
And it's a comedy, right? Basic.
By the title, I guess.
Yeah. Homie gets out of jail after 20 years. He got caught up in that 3 strikes thing, and now he's trying to go back to the old barrio. And instead of a taco shop, it's a cupcake shop. Instead of the homies in Pendletons, there's hipsters in flannel. So he's like, okay, my whole body is gone. So it's a comedy. Has Jerry Garcia, has Concrete, Dunos, Anthony Fernandez.
Wait, Jerry Garcia, not the Grateful Dead guy. He's
no,
he's been out of
the
business
comedian.
for a while. Okay, I'm sorry.
Comedian,
Could you move the mic just a little bit?
Right there. So the comedian, he's it's a fun comedy, but it was on that set that I nicknamed that particular group Chicano Hollywood. And we had Chicanos in front of the camera, Chicanos behind the camera. Now, when I say Chicano, I mean Chicano voice, not just people like me, Mexican American, but Salvadoran, Guatemalan. We're all raised in the same barrio, so it's a voice, right? It's
Chicano adjacent people as well.
Yeah. It's all familia. The thing with Hollywood too, it's different. There's a voice called the Latinx voice, and all respect to those that claim that voice, right? But that's not our voice. It's a whole different voice. And because of the Hollywood not knowing that we as Latinos are not all one group, right? I've had people in big studios tell me, hey, we think you guys all just want, Univision and, just Spanish stuff. And I'm like, no. I said, we are, we're born and raised here in America. So we're Americans.
We're bilingual, we're English speakers, we're Spanish speakers.
I was raised eating tacos and watching the Brady Bunch, so it's like, that was our upbringing. So,
at the same time, by the way.
So our mission is to build and empower the Chicano community, being the Chicano voice. Here in Phoenix, the partnership of growth outside of LA started in Phoenix with Gil Bivens, with the Arizona Barrio Stories. And we're here tonight to do a networking mixer. We're going to basically give a presentation. So if you are a filmmaker, you're a content creator, you're a producer, or you're a wannabe, you want to get into the game, we're going to be here tonight. And I'll let Gil say for the director.
Yeah, we'll go there. But before we do, Chicano Hollywood is everything you described and a movement, which is really kind of fascinating to me. It represents on some level something like 40 million out of the 67 million Latinos in the country. Right?
I say 40 to 50 million.
Yeah. It depends on whose house you go to. And,
exactly.
And if everybody's at work that day. Yeah. But beyond that, you have live streaming. You have an app. People can watch what on your live stream?
Yeah. So our movement has grown from a friendly mixer to a social media, right? So we have over 100. Going on 3 years now. Actually, this month we incorporated. So we're going on we have over 100,000 followers. We have a streaming app. So it's a Chicano Netflix. That's the best way to describe it.
Netflix.
Go to your app store, put in Chicano Hollywood, you'll see it there. So right there, we're putting the content of Chicano Latino creators, whether they're in front of the camera or behind it. So we're putting stuff up there.
Is it films and
TV podcasts, documentaries, episodic? We just put up a really cool
all narrative stuff.
News. So some are not news yet. We are gonna walk into that though with we're going to create the live segment, and we're going to grow into some news outlets, also live events, and also I'm going to start going into online shopping. That's a big trend right now. So I'm like, we're going to go after that.
The Chicano Shopping Network. I love the sound of that. Okay. We're going to end this segment, and we're going to come back, and we're going to talk to Gil and Roman about the tie-in with all of this. So I want to tell our listeners, thank you for joining us again here on Vanguardia America. We'll be right back with the folks from Arizona Radio Stories and Latino USA TV. I'm Jim.
Cada día podemos aprender algo nuevo. También tenemos la capacidad de desaprender un viejo hábito. Y mejor aún, desarrollar la capacidad de reaprender, es decir, de cambiar paradigmas o creencias limitantes para actualizar. Es una decisión. Así que si decides, podemos aprender juntos. Tenemos una cita en Diálogo con Mirna Pineda, tu espacio de aprendizaje y superación, de lunes a viernes a las 10 de la mañana. Acompáñanos y gracias por tener el buen gusto de mantenerte bien informado.
AARP Arizona Hispanic Connection presenta Hablemos de Salud, Dinero y Amor. una conversación interactiva sobre temas relevantes para hispanos latinos. Acompáñanos los martes de 1 a 2 de la tarde por esta estación y por Facebook en AARP Arizona Hispanic Connection.
Arizona Hispanic Connection.
Únete a la conversación.
Blanca Irives y John Herrera te invitan a escuchar Mi Dinero, Tu Dinero.
Hola, soy Blanca Irives y te daré información sobre impuestos, el número ITIN y todo lo relacionado con tu negocio como licencias y LLC.
¿Qué tal? Soy John Herrera, agente con licencia de seguros autorizado por el estado de Arizona. Te diré cómo proteger tu auto, casa, vida y negocio.
Los martes a las 9 de la mañana con American Family. Persigue tus sueños. Nosotros los protegeremos.
Welcome back. I'm your host, James Garcia. Thank you for joining us on Vanguardia America. And we're going to go now to Gil Bivens with Arizona Radio Stories, which is has a strong following on Facebook. They've been doing interviews and stories for quite a long time. Roman Reyes is his partner on a new project called Latino USA TV Network. Gil, talk to us about what you want to see happen tonight at the Arizona Latino Arts and Cultural Center in terms of the presence of Chicano Hollywood, and specifically how it ties in with your dream for Latino USA TV Network.
Oh, absolutely. And thank you for having us here, James. Yeah, so the tie-in for us is very important to have Johnny Murillo here with Chicano Hollywood in LA. Our mutual space is basically advocacy in the Latino space, making sure that our voices are being heard. And to begin with, Arizona Radio Stories was built based on the story goes based on eminent domain, where a lot of the families were pushed out of the communities in the late 70s, early 80s. And we created the Arizona Radio Stories space to pay tribute to all of the what I call the vanishing barrios, and to make sure that we weren't forgotten. A lot of rich history, a lot of the family moved on. And, a lot of us came from communities that we were living below poverty. In fact, the old saying goes, we were so poor, but we didn't realize that we didn't know we were poor, right? So we had
when you're living the story, it's not necessarily clear to you unless people point it out to you.
We paid tradition to.
What neighborhood was that, by the way?
This is Golden Gate, Las
Golden
Cuatro
Gate.
Tipas, Campito.
That story, it's been replicated all over the country, right? LA has its own version of that story where eminent domain was brought in to build a stadium, for instance, or to build interstate highways. That's a very common story. People during the development of the interstate highway system, starting the Eisenhower administration, and I'm not old enough to remember the origin myself, but but the story is that they were saying, hey, we need to put highways across the country, and where are we going to put them? Why don't we just cut through the Black neighborhoods and the Latino neighborhoods? And so this is a story and that's the roots of Arizona Radio Stories, but it's become so much more. What is it now?
Well, now we've expanded. Originally, the platform began as Arizona Radio Stories, but we were limited in circulating all our movement or interviews. And so Roman Reyes here, who you'll meet here shortly, we acquired a streaming channel called Latino USA. And Latino USA allows us to deliver our stories through Roku, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, so that we can share the richness of our community, around the world. And that's
is that up and running now?
It's up and running now. Okay. Absolutely. You can go down to Latino USA TV. You can download the app, and you can actually see all the stories that we have archived, that we have taped, that we have captured, are now there. But in any case, our connection to Johnny Murillo is very important, because when we met a couple of years ago, we were both sharing the same space and advocacy, making sure that our rich Latino roots were not being forgotten, and paying tribute to that space. And so fast forward, we're partners now under a new project that we're working on, so that we can get a lot more aggressive and attract more media, filmmakers, content creators, so that we can all unite together in one platform where we can organize our own voice, correct?
Yeah. Well, now you want to get a lot more aggressive. Cuidado con ese, right? Because if the FBI is listening, they're thinking, who are these radicals? Roman, please tell me, why are you involved in this? And Roman, everyone should know, who, if you don't already know him, is a visual artist, an extraordinary artist in his own right, and has been affiliated with the Arizona Latino Arts and Cultural Center for many years as one of the founders. Talk about why you're part of this project.
Well, first of all, thank you for having us here. Well, one of the things that I'm really looking forward to is meeting people that have kind of my background, because we want people to come in that are, once again, storytellers, actors, people that work in the as cast members and so forth. My experience, for example, is I worked on The Lord of the Rings,
in the filmmaking,
but
yeah.
more than that, I also appeared on various movies, Transamerica, Denial. And I want to be able to talk to some of the people that come to our event tonight, because there's such a need for, when you go on set, there's wranglers, there's architects, there's a whole array of talent, and that we really don't know about.
Going to what Johnny suggested about people behind the scenes being critically important as well, producers and all of the people that make a film happen. Yeah.
Well, it's like myself, I'm SAG qualified. I've done national commercials,
Screen Actors Guild qualified.
Precisely. And so I want to be able to maybe talk to some of the people and get them interested, because this is a phenomenal thing that's happening with this group right here. And it's
a growing community, which of course means that it's a growing audience,
yes.
And it's a growing audience with real buying power. I think the last numbers I saw with it, we're at about $1.5 trillion, maybe even closer to $2 trillion of buying power in the United States. And I'm talking about overall Latino community, and that's real money.
Yes.
I mean, that is real money.
The most recent quote is 3.2 trillion,
3.2 billion
buying power, and they're projected to grow up to the 4.2 trillion within the next few years.
And that's larger than many countries in the world.
Yes, if we were to separate, we'd be larger than France, larger than Italy, I believe. So yeah, the buying power within the American Latino community is astronomical.
So I've looked at some numbers recently in terms of the lack of our exposure in the film industry. I think one of the recent studies talked about we're almost 20% of the population, but maybe in 5% of films we're somehow represented. Yeah, and so that's abysmal. But what can change that?
Well, this is how it works in Hollywood. There's gatekeepers, there's writers. Okay, what changes, a big complaint right now is we got to change the narrative, right? How we're writing each other. The problem is you got non-Latino, non-Chicano writers writing about us. So they write
they're not writing about it.
Yeah, and who have been, right? So they write based on their own perspectives, right? So if the script calls for a gang member, well, if they got bullied because they went to Hollywood high school by some cholo, they're going to write that gang member as a cholo, right? Or if
they don't write about the nice gang members.
Yeah. So they write us the way they see it, right? So it starts with us changing, creating more writers, right? And then we have to grow so that we become the gatekeepers. One of the things that we've done, with Chicano Hollywood and with our partnership that we have here with Arizona Body Stories and this new initiative that we're doing, is that and it's not intentional, but we are disrupting the system, because we don't need the system anymore. We don't need it. We have enough purchasing power within us. We have the skills. My network of filmmakers have done Roman here, Lord of the Rings, right? Other filmmakers I know have done the major projects. So within us, we have the skills, we have the talent, we have the actors, we have it all. So when we launched Chicano Hollywood, it wasn't intentionally to give the men, like, hey, we don't need you anymore. It's more like, we're just going to do our own thing.
But you also have the platforms now that didn't exist 20 years ago, right? With YouTube, the internet.
This couldn't have happened 10 years ago. That couldn't have happened 20 years ago. It can happen now. And there's enough of us now that we don't need anybody else.
Let me ask this. Anyone chime in here, is the pipeline being built? In other words, are we as artists, and I happen to be a playwright and produce Latino theater here, and so I know very much what you're talking about. If you want to see Latinos on stage, sometimes you just have to produce it yourself and write that story yourself. But is the pipeline being built? Are we reaching out to young people younger than us, and making sure that they're in the pipeline? Is that happening?
Oh, totally. So we have a lot of outreach to, like, I do school assemblies. So we're going to, in San Diego in 2 weeks, we'll be actually going to the juvenile hall. We have a lot of training events. We did this past spring. We did how to produce a reality show, how to produce a commercial. So we're really focused on training.
You have master classes on your
I have master
live
classes.
stream.
Yeah, if you go to our website, you see our master classes. We did all those so that our community could start learning and growing, whether they're in high school still or they're younger, or if they're older. There's a lot of guys that are our age, and we won't say
And
our
the
age.
variety of classes you have is great, right? I mean, it's like filmmaking 101, but
Acting
more experience in acting.
Yeah,
Do you have a master class on tortillas de harina? Because
You know,
I love those.
that's actually, we're going to start
I
growing
love
into
those.
different
I could do
areas.
it for you. My mom taught me how to make it, so
Yeah.
I could do it for you. Back here locally, Gil, where do you want to see this relationship go? How do you want to see it blossom, this relationship with Chicano Hollywood?
I think the synergy that we're looking for is it's all in
We've got about 2 minutes.
It's all in collaboration. We have partnered up with Johnny because he's traveling all over the United States, advocating our partnership and the importance to connect all the playwrights, all the filmmakers, and the content creators. And so that platform is important for us because it allows us to piggyback off of him so that we can circulate our stories with the partnership, which puts us in the millions, by the way. So you're talking about all 50 states around the U.S.
Yeah, we're everywhere now.
We're everywhere now.
Venden tacos y menudo por donde
Yeah,
quiera.
yeah. And that's really the growth that I'm looking for, is a partnership that is going to allow us to interface with what Johnny's already doing so that we can plug into his success. And just by default, our stories will be heard, our stories will be read, and so that's our connection.
Can we close, Johnny, with, are there in other parts of the country other versions of Arizona Vario stories?
Yes, exactly. That's what we've been. So we have Chicano Hollywood Chicago, Chicano Hollywood El Paso, San Diego, Las Vegas, Albuquerque. We're going to Albuquerque next weekend, Portland, San Jose. And then I've got meetings in the fall coming up to go into Denver and to go into Salt Lake City. So, yes, we're growing. We also have a conference coming up September 13th and 14th.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Yes,
in
September
LA.
14th in Los Angeles.
Yes, the 13th and 14th in LA. It's called Elevate the Latino Voice Conference. And last year was amazing. We had Edward James Olmos, Luis Guzman. So if you're listening to this, si estás escuchando este mensaje.
What about Mario Lopez? I just heard he's Mexicano.
Oh yeah, Mario.
I just saw on the internet.
You're talking about the pipeline, right?
Yeah.
So we're launching a magazine, okay? And the magazine, Mario's on the front cover. So
I'm kidding. I'm kidding about him because he's always been Mexican American. But there's been some stuff on the internet about he just came out of the Chicano closet. You know, I'm
he's from Chula Vista. He's a Chicano hardcore. I don't understand why people say this. It's
it's just silliness.
His team, they love us. We're partnered together, so we're hoping we're trying to figure out his schedule, so he might be there. You know, so we're trying to make that work.
We're going to close now. Is the event open to the public tonight?
Yes, just go to
Arizona Latino Arts and Cultural Center, 147 East Adams. Show up if you want to learn more about Chicano Hollywood in Arizona. Vario Stories and Latino USA Network. Thank you so much to our audience for joining us again this week. I'm James Garcia, your host. You're listening to Vanguardia America.
Estás escuchando la onda 1190 AM, la más informativa de Arizona.
Manténgase al día con la información que le presentamos.